The shoot-'em-up genre is not for everybody. Shmups are normally associated with brutal difficulty, which I would imagine turns many people off. I recently found myself enjoying the genre a lot more, and I try to get my hands on as many shoot-'em-up games as I can. If you can get into shmups, they can stir up some interesting feelings. You may be just sitting in your living room playing a game, but you're also hurtling through space, through alien worlds, admiring your surroundings, as you pilot your ship past floating obstacles and structures. It becomes quite apparent that you're not welcome, and the term "I come in peace" means nothing. Hostile ships are gunning straight for you, so you jump into overdrive and quickly try to dodge an onslaught of incoming projectiles, lasers, and bullets. Blowing away enemy ships eventually becomes second nature, and only your excellent piloting skills can ensure your survival. Mastering a shmup requires both skill and memorization, and only through practice can you overcome the hordes of enemy forces. Fans of the genre will often recommend the Thunder Force series, specifically Thunder Force 3. It's often considered a great game for newcomers to the genre, while still offering a challenge. Developed by Technosoft and published by Sega, Thunder Force 3 was released for the Sega Genesis in 1990. Known for its accessibility, excellent music, and action-packed gameplay, it's easy to see why Thunder Force 3 is frequently on many lists of must-play Genesis games. Normally, arcade games are ported to consoles, but in Thunder Force 3's case, the reverse happened. Thunder Force 3 was eventually ported to arcades, I think in 1990, renamed Thunder Force AC. This arcade release included some noticeable changes, including stages and enemies borrowed from Thunder Force 2. Interestingly enough, Thunder Force 3 was only released for Sega consoles, but Thunder Force AC was ported to the Super Nintendo as Thunder Spirits in 1991. This was also the only Thunder Force game released for a Nintendo console. Thunder Force 2 and 3 were included in the Thunder Force Gold Pack 1, released for the Sega Saturn in 1996, and this was followed by the Thunder Force Gold Pack 2, also released for the Saturn. Thunder Force Gold Pack 2 includes Thunder Force AC and Thunder Force 4. Gold Pack 2 was the only way players could play Thunder Force AC at home, minus emulation, making this a somewhat unique release. Sadly, both Gold Packs were exclusive to Japan, and you will require an action replay to play them on a North American Sega Saturn. Like many Saturn games, the Gold Packs are not easy to find, and it took me years to acquire both in decent condition. Considering you can play all but one of these games found in the Gold Packs on the Genesis, I would consider these packs as novelties, especially since they're not exactly cheap. For this review, I will be covering Thunder Force 3 for both the Genesis and Saturn, Thunder Force AC for Saturn, and Thunder Spirits for the Super Nintendo. Accessible or not, I suck at shmups including Thunder Force 3, and for the sake of getting footage for this review, I'm not ashamed to say I use cheats. I do envy and have the utmost respect for those that can play these games to completion and make it look easy. I've never played the first Thunder Force and never beat Thunder Force 2, but the story in 3 takes place directly after 2. The Galaxy Federation has created the Fire Leo 03 Styx spacecraft. This is the ship you'll be piloting, and apparently it's equipped with the firepower of a large starfighter. From what I've read, the Oran Empire has installed cloaking devices on 5 planets in their territory to conceal their main base. It's your job to navigate through each planet, destroy the cloaking devices, infiltrate the Oran Empire's headquarters, and stop the Empire once and for all. Unless you read up, there's no way to really know what the hell is going on, but this is a shmup after all, so the story isn't really why you would want to play this. Basically, you just need to fly your ship through 8 stages, destroy the bosses, and survive to win. Thunder Force AC and Thunder Spirits change up the ending a bit, but it's the same story in each game. Just like in any other shmup, you start the game with a set amount of ships or lives. If you lose all of your lives, you can spend a credit or continue to keep playing. If you use up all of your continues, it's game over. Thunder Force 3 actually consists of 3 difficulty modes, Normal, Hard, and Mania, but there's no obvious way to switch between them, and I believe the game is automatically defaulted to Normal. However, you wouldn't know that unless you're playing the Genesis game and enter the configuration menu accessed by a special button combination. From this menu, you can also change your ship's starting speed, change controls, and you even have access to the various audio test options. I don't know if the configuration menu is present in the Saturn version, but if it is, I don't know how to access it. That can be kind of a big deal for Saturn players who may have conquered the game on normal and want to test their skills on a higher difficulty mode. I don't believe the configuration menu is present in Thunder Force AC, but you can access the diagnosis menu. From this menu, you have access to various test options, dip switch assignments, and even bookkeeping data, but I didn't find a way to really change any of these options. I think the diagnosis menu is just an indication that the game was ripped straight from the arcade release. As soon as you start playing Thunder Force AC, it's immediately apparent that the game is much more challenging than Thunder Force 3. I've read the difficulty in AC is equivalent to Mania in 3, but I really can't confirm if that's true. I can confirm that I suck and didn't get nearly as far in AC as I did in any other version of the game. Thunder Spirits, on the other hand, is nowhere near as difficult as AC, and also nowhere near as good as any other version. Thunder Force 3 lets you choose from any of the first 5 stages available. Once you choose, you will automatically progress through the rest in a predefined order. After beating these first 5 stages, you take the battle to the Orn Empire, and will proceed to the final 3 stages. Shmups are all about repetition, but the stage select is a neat way of easing that repetitive feeling, allowing you to mix things up a bit. If you're like me, you'll barely make it out of Stage 2 unscathed before getting annihilated in Stage 3. Being able to select the starting stage is also a great way to practice and memorize the stage layouts and enemy placements. Thunder Force AC eliminates the stage select, so you're forced to progress through each stage in a defined order. If you manage to see that game over screen, well, you'll need to start over from Stage 1. Because of its arcade origins, you have credits rather than continues, but I found no way to emulate putting in more money for more credits, so it's not like you can even cheat the system and provide yourself with an endless supply of credits. If there is a way, I would love to know how to do it. The biggest downside is that you must play through each stage in the same order every time, so if you get bored or frustrated with shmups and repetition easily, Thunder Force AC may not be the version to start with. The stage select is also absent in Thunder Spirits. Unlike its predecessors, Thunder Force 3 is purely a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up with no overhead stages. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. You fly from left to right trying to destroy enemy aircraft and dodge incoming projectiles. Enemies not only come from the right but from the left behind your ship as well, so you'll always need to be alert. You can adjust your ship's speed at any time during gameplay, and by speed I mean how quickly you can move your ship around the screen, not how fast it actually flies. This is actually a really helpful mechanic. Some stages require you to navigate through small tight corridors, and if you're set to maneuver at top speed you can easily crash. Thunder Force 3 and AC let you hold down the fire button to fire your weapons, but in Thunder Spirits, holding the fire button causes your ship to fire at a significantly slower rate, and only by tapping the button quickly can you fire your weapons rapidly, which is a huge problem. Not only did it tire my thumb out, but it makes the combat a bit more challenging as well. You'll always have 2 basic attacks, a twin shot that fires straight ahead and a single shot that fires both forwards and backwards. You can acquire better firepower from weapon power-ups obtained from destroyed enemies, or in specific locations within the stages. All of the actual weapons can be stored and you can switch between them at any time. When you die, you lose the weapon currently selected. The Sever weapon will replace your twin shot with big, thick lasers. The Lancer upgrades the single shot and adds an additional stream of lasers to your rear shot. The Wave weapon is great for covering wide areas and does a lot of damage. The Fire weapon enables your ship to fire missiles straight up and down, and the missiles will move along surfaces above and below you. The Hunter weapon is a homing set of spheres and can be quite useful if you don't want to get too close to an enemy. The Claw is one of the best power-ups you can get. Once acquired, 2 claws will rotate around your ship, essentially doubling your firepower. And finally, you can acquire a shield that enables your ship to take more damage before blowing up. The stages, or planets, vary in theme and each include different enemy types and bosses, and even environmental hazards. Each planet has its own name, but because I don't think I'm pronouncing at least 2 of them properly, I'll just keep referring to them as stages. Enemies range from flying ships to giant snake-like things. Stage 3 always kicks my ass and is set on an underwater planet. In some areas of the stage, the water will push your ship upward, and you'll need to avoid some real annoying exploding enemies. Now, unless you destroy them first, if they explode on their own, the explosions can destroy your ship, which is usually what happens to me. In the second stage, you'll need to avoid the lava that spits out from the pits below. I think Stage 4 is my least favorite in Thunder Force 3. The platforms shift around and many times you need to be ahead of the platform before it shifts, or you'll crash. It's one of those trial and error things where there's no way for you to know it's coming, making it real hard to avoid death on your first run. You absolutely must memorize this stage to be successful. Stage 5 is set on an ice planet, and I think it's actually easier than Stage 4. Much of the stage has you moving through smaller areas, so lowering your ship's speed is a good idea, but the stage in general is relatively easy to navigate. The stages in Thunder Force AC and Thunder Spirits are a bit different. Stages 4 and 5 have been replaced with 2 stages from Thunder Force 2, and I honestly prefer these over the originals. All of the stages carried over from 3 have also been altered in some way, but not too drastically. The stage layouts are a bit different and I noticed some different enemies, but I think if you memorize the stages and enemy patterns in Thunder Force 3, you won't have a huge problem in AC. The bosses in all versions of the game are actually quite disappointing. Yeah, they're big and mean, but it doesn't take long to bring them down, and their attack patterns don't consist of much. Thunder Force 3 looked pretty amazing in 1990, and it runs without a hitch on both the Genesis and Saturn. The parallax scrolling looks great, the wavy and trippy background in Stage 2 was jaw-dropping back in the day, and it's hard not to notice the impressive amount of detail in the environments, from the heavily wooded forest of the Hydra planet to the icy mountains of the planet Ellis. Although I don't think the game aged as gracefully as other 16-bit titles when it comes to the visuals. Some things just look very basic and simple, like some of the enemy designs and explosions. Now, as impressive as the detailed stages and backgrounds are, they can make it hard to see what's happening during the action, and because everything is so vibrant and colorful. The things that should be clearly visible, like your ship and bullets, don't always stand out. When it comes to performance, Thunder Force 3 and AC run perfectly fine, but Thunder Spirits is easily the worst offender. It feels slower paced, and the frame rate dips constantly. The slower processor of the Super Nintendo just can't seem to handle the speed and on-screen action, and the game suffers because of it. Even with less enemies to deal with, whenever 1 or 2 enemies appear on screen, the frame rate takes a serious shit. When it comes to the presentation, there are differences in both the audio and visual departments between the versions. However, the audio differences are the most noticeable. Thunder Force 3 on the Genesis sounds great. The music is excellent and all the tunes are catchy and memorable. The sound effects are basic by today's standards, but they get the job done. The Saturn version has better quality audio in general, but the music wasn't emulated properly. It still sounds great and everything, but from what I understand, the music was just placed on the disc, and it's streamed during gameplay. Instead of continuously looping, the end of each song fades out before starting up again, which threw me off at first. It's not a huge deal or anything, but considering the audio presentation was flawless by Genesis standards, it's a shame the same can't be said about the Saturn version. The music in Thunder Force AC seems to be emulated properly, but I've heard some say the sound effects are more tinny compared to 3. I didn't really notice that, but even if it is, I don't see it as a huge problem. Surprisingly, Thunder Spirits is the worst when it comes to audio. I say surprisingly because the Super Nintendo is known for producing better sound quality than the Genesis. Thunder Spirits includes modified or remixed music, which just doesn't sound as good as the other versions, nor do the sound effects, which just sound weaker and muted overall. It's a shame that Thunder Spirits has no real redeeming qualities. Visually, each game is almost identical minus a few graphical differences. You may not even notice, and the only differences I noticed were the explosion effects. I would agree that Thunder Force 3 is a great game for newcomers to the genre, but not so easy that it doesn't require some mastery. Memorization is the hallmark of any great shmup, and that's no exception here. Even for a quote-unquote easy shmup like this, I think the clips shown in this video prove I'm terrible at it, but I can see why Thunder Force 3 would be a perfect gateway to the genre. It welcomes you in the beginning and only attempts to destroy you towards the end. The challenges never feel impossible with a bit of practice, and the bosses are just pushovers. For those who have mastered Thunder Force 3, you may want to give Thunder Force AC a shot. The new stages and altered stage layouts should give you something to look forward to. However, buyer beware, you're going to pay a hefty price for it. If you have never played Thunder Force 3, I would recommend just getting the Genesis game, which may even be the best out of them all. It may cost you a few bucks, but nowhere near the amount you'll spend for either of the gold packs for Saturn. The Genesis version lets you adjust the difficulty, while the Saturn version has better sound quality, but poorly emulated music. I think the 2 new stages in Thunder Force AC are better than those it replaced from 3, but the lack of a stage select is a real bummer. If anything, I would recommend acquiring the Genesis version of Thunder Force 3 and the Thunder Force Gold Pack 2 for Saturn, just because it provides a direct port of the Thunder Force AC arcade game. It also provides the best version of Thunder Force 4. Because of the cost of both gold packs, I would only recommend Thunder Force Gold Pack 1 to serious collectors. It includes direct ports of both Genesis versions of Thunder Force 2 and 3 with minor audio issues, so there's no real reason to get it if you can acquire the Genesis games for much cheaper. As for Thunder Spirits, stay the fuck away from it. It sucks. If you really want to play a good shmup on the Super Nintendo, check out Space Megaforce or Axelay.